Welcome everybody to the new patch tier list. And with us we got AJ again, NA Challenger consistently over the past few years. And we're going to be breaking down the tier list of the current patch with, of course, all of the changes that have been implemented. And it's been a heavy patch for mid lane. So we're going to start off with breaking down the tiers and why certain champs are listed in the tiers and what you can expect from certain tiers as well. And then we're going to be tiering the extra champions and in the tiers that are already existing. So we're going to be starting off with the S standout tier. Enlighten us, AJ. What is this tier all about?
Yeah, so basically what the S tier is, and I kind of coined the word standout, is it's really the champs that are either broken by concept or they're meta defining. They shape the meta around them, right? And they can be played in basically every single game and it's going to be good. And in my opinion, that's Tilia, right? You can play her in basically every single game. She has good wave clear, good mobility, can with her R, right, can cross map, play every neutral objective, which is perfect for the meta right now.
Absolutely. And we used to have Ahri and Syndra in this tier as well. They did receive some nerfs, so we'll see if they're still S tier or A tier later. But now we know what S tier is about. Let's move on to A tier. And we call A tier, these are reliable meta-defining champions as well. These are basically always strong. They have a few weaknesses and they are exposable, so they're not like insane like the category of S. But take, for example, Galio. Galio is like a perfect example of a super reliable champion in about 80% of the games, especially when the enemies are like AP centric, when you have a lot of skirmishers on your team, where you can go deep or have follow up with your R. Your champion is just going to be so insanely useful and absolutely meta defining and game breaking in the right in positions. But if you play against these heavy 80 carry champs on mid, or you have enchanter supports in which it's hard for you to get good ult angles, this champ is not the best champion in the game. While Talia can, for example, deal with those type of situations. Another good example is Azir. Why is Azir in here?
Yeah, so Azir, I mean, let's start with his strengths, right? I mean, I think he's the definition of reliable, right? He has the X factor of the late game scaling, right? He's a good sieging with his turret and his range. He's got decent side laning in a majority of games. He's got decent team fighting, right? But he does have that minor weakness, which can be a major weakness in some games, right? Which is his laning is relatively weak, especially against some of these high threat melees like the Akalis, the Yones, the Silases, right? And then with how many objectives are early game, sometimes he can struggle a little bit. But yeah, other than that, he's very reliable, right? So I think Azir's a perfect candidate for champion in A.
Absolutely. And one of the key things that we see in this A tier as well, and which is, I think, what the current meta is all about. It's all about skirmishing, right? And being able to have high impact on these fights around neutrals. But it's also about lane control. And you see a very good combination of both of these strengths in this tier. For example, the champ like Victor, even though he's not the strongest early game skirmisher, he's really good at isolating the lane, constantly putting pressure onto the enemy laner. With his high wave clear post E upgrade, he can just constantly be first at plays and keep up the lane control. Very similarly as to Orianna, while other champs like Sylas have that X factor in the skirmishes itself.
Yes.
That's
Yeah,
a funny
and I want
one.
to follow.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to follow up with the Kiana as well because people are still asking about the Kiana, right? Why is Kiana so high up in the tier? The reason why Kiana is high up in the tier is her skirmishing X factor and her ability to get out of lane, right?
Yeah,
So she has that reliability, guys. That's why she's A. She's reliable. She's one of the most reliable assassins. She's always gonna have high impact in skirmishes because how good her R is in river fights, right? She can reliably get out of lane phase, right? Which is really, really, really important. She can consistently in every matchup survive lane phase, and then she has high threat, and then she can kind of carry that and transition that into the mid game.
absolutely. And I'm not sure if you guys have seen any clips of like the Kiana OTPs, but they one-shot
Yes.
people at like kill ranges that you're like, holy moly. I've reviewed some Kiana players in the MLA over the past 2 weeks, and I sent AJ some clips, and we were mind boggled by Kiana just one-shotting players at level 3 from 80% HP. I was like, what is this champ even doing? Of course, this champ is really, really good. Of course, she's hard, right? But if you got the hands to make this champ work, absolutely insane champion at the moment. Moving on to B tier, we call this conditional. Why do we call that this way, AJ?
Yeah, so the main thing about the conditional B tier is that these are champs that can be S tier in really good games for them, right? But in other games, they're going to be quite average to maybe a little bit below average, right? So let's take LeBlanc here. LeBlanc's a perfect example of this. LeBlanc has a lot of early game strengths, right? And she thrives with multi-threat. So if you got a comp that's got multi-threat, like maybe you got engaged support and some kind of Lee Sin or Rek'Sai or something, LeBlanc all of a sudden could take over a game. But if you play LeBlanc and you've got like a scaling jungle, a scaling bot lane with no engage, it's like it can just feel really bad. Or like if you're against champs with high CC, so it's like they're not so reliable as the A tier, but they're not only counter picks. It's more of like if you get a good game for them, a good, overall holistic game, they're gonna really thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I can't imagine myself playing in a triple AP con with LeBlanc. Like I don't
Yeah.
think I'm gonna do more than 10 game damage in that
Yeah.
game. Other good examples in this case is Akali. Like Akali actually
Hmm.
thrives heavily in the skirmish-oriented meta at the moment. But she has
Yes.
one big problem, and that's the fact that she has no wave clear. So you fall behind on this champion with
Yes.
not having a single bit of wave clear. Good luck coming back into the game.
Hmm.
Very similar is towards the Umbessa. We also have champs like, for example, Zillion. You could say like Zillion is a bit more of a, like some people would make the argument Zillion is a counter pick champ, but not really
Yeah.
the case. It's actually more compositioning. Like, does he have actual win conditions
Yes.
that the speed that can utilize the speed of him, or does he not really have tools where he can work with? It's very similar to the flip the game tier right here, the Katarina
Yeah.
and the Talon. You're gonna have good drafts, you're gonna have shit drafts, and it
Yeah.
just really also depends um, on the game states that you're going to be picking them in, but
Yes.
also a little bit more how the game plays out for these type of champions. Final good one
Sure.
to note, right? TF. TF's received some buffs, some direct buffs, some indirect buffs. Why is he in B tier? Because I think some people would maybe say, oh, the ROA
Right.
buffs put him in A tier. What do you think about this?
Yeah, so I could see argument for him being an A tier, but when I think of reliable with minor weaknesses, TF doesn't jump out to me. And the reason being is that he does have some decent weaknesses, right? Like he's a much more utility focused mid laner early on in the game, right? Which is kind of similar to Zillion in that regard, right? He's very like in terms of the early game skirmishes, he's not the best. His really a lot of his power comes from the gold card, right? He does have that ult for good gank setup, but his laning phase is not that strong, right? So he's conditional, right? If you're in a game where you don't need to have a strong lane phase and you can kind of just clear and minimize and play towards like your Jinx bot lane, then he's going to be great. But maybe there's another game where you really needed that strong skirmishing and damage, and TF just didn't really offer that for your comp. So that's why personally I have him in B tier, especially compared to Talia, right? Because every champ in League is compared to everyone else. And so Talia fulfills the job and the niche that Twisted Fate has, just better in every way.
Yeah,
What, right? Better lane phase, more wave clear, can roam with her R, better skirmishing, better scaling, right? So that's why I have TF and B personally.
absolutely. So moving on to the counterpick tier, right? The C tier. And there's a very good reason why we put all of these champs here in this tier. Is take, for example, the Cassiopeia, the Vladimir, the Lissandra, the Swain. These champs are excellent if the stars align, but usually the
Hmm.
stars don't really align for these champs. You actually need to have a decent lane matchups. So if you're playing
Yes.
Lissandra or Swain into long range oriented champions, it's very hard to actually play out the lane, get some type of control, get a foot going into the game. Very similar as to Pantheon. If you rock this champion into an Anivia mid, you're not going to have that much impact. You don't have the wave clear to keep up. You can't really trade upon them. So it's just very hard to navigate these games. We also have, for example, the Enchanter supports right here. Like, if you find the right game, if you find the right matchup where you don't get murdered in lane, like
Yes.
especially the Seraphine, right, gets murdered in the lane,
Yep.
fantastic champ, right? If you can get there, like Malzar, Viger, fantastic champ if you can get to the late game in right drafts. But it is
Mhm.
sometimes hard to get there. What anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, what I would add the C tier keyword to B tier because we were saying, well, B tier is
Yeah,
conditional. Why aren't these champs in B tier? The
yeah,
difference is that these B tier champs can work in more lanes than C tier champs, right? Like LeBlanc has a good lane against way more reliable in lane than way more of these other champions in C. Same with Akali, right? In C tier, not only do you need to have a good draft for your champ, you need to have a good 1v1 as well. So it's like way more niche to fulfill what you need to make these champs work. Like for example, let's take Irelia, right? Irelia is really good into Azir, really good into Asol. But if you play against champs like maybe you're against a high CC support, maybe you're against a Zaya, right? You're not going to be able to win a game with Irelia. So
yep.
that's kind of how I view C tier.
So and we're gonna get a question, of course. Like, how comes that the kill, like, what the worst laner in the game, is actually in B?
Right.
Well, I think that she actually has massive tools if she can get to level six.
Yes.
Say, like, we see that desperate Nasus guy in EU,
Yes.
right? Like, what that guy's doing on that champ is unique. It's very
Yes.
unique. Like, this champ's not bad at all.
Mhm.
If she gets going, like, I think she's a lot more threatening as well towards these other champs. She has a lot more tools, a lot more flexibility in the way that she approaches the game. And therefore, I think there's a clear distinction in the strength and overall pick frequency and quality that you're going to be having in the games where you're going to be picking the C tier versus the B tier champions.
Mhm.
Our favorite tier coming up right here, the D tier, dog shit tier. Not much has changed except for
Yes.
Mel getting some buffs. So who knows? She might escape dog shit tier.
Yeah.
But dog shit tier is dog shit tier for a reason. These champs are just the definition of like just not good enough. They're just
Yeah. I
bad.
mean, yeah, what I would say for this tier is like, I mean, I have an anecdotal example. When I play Smolder, I can have both a good lane and a good composition to play Smolder into, and I still feel low impact because these champs have, they're basically the inverse of A. They have too many weaknesses and only a few very niche strengths, right? Like Lucian is like, okay, if you do not win your lane so ridiculously hard, you've lost the game. Right, Smolder is the reverse. Right, if you don't make it to 4 items and your farming 10 CS per minute, you've lost the game, right? So like these are just champs that they just have too many weaknesses and not enough strengths, in my opinion.
One of the main things to note about these champs as well is that in the current meta, these champs have a like comparatively towards especially the A tier champs, they have a power trough when you want to have this
Yes.
the spike. A really good
Yes.
example is Smolder. Right, Smolder is actually quite strong levels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He can
Yes.
hold on a level 6, but starting level 7, when the mages get 4 points in their wave clear abilities, when they get their lost chapters, Smolder is suddenly at a point where he can't keep up anymore. And not
Yeah.
lightly too. No, he gets murdered.
Yeah.
Murdered.
And then it only gets worse as you make it to mid game because
Yeah,
you can't side lane, right? Like if you just look at every champion being above, Corki murders him in the side. Zed murders him in the side. Talia always gets priority. Azir murders him in the side. Like we could just keep going on and on and on and on. So it's like, yeah, these champs just they don't fit with the way League has developed as well in season 15, right? Like that's the other thing to add. They don't fit, right?
yeah.
Smolder mid does not fit into season 15.
No, absolutely. So now knowing all of this, right, we're now going to be tiering the champs that receive changes. And
Hmm.
we're going to start off with Ahri.
Yeah.
Purely because she's the first one that actually received changes. She actually got pretty decently nerfed here. So what they exactly changed, right, is they reduced their armor growth by 0.5 per level. So that means that every other level, that's going to be a full armor down. Quite big, in my opinion. Um, what they also did is they lowered the base damage of the W. They increased the cooldown of the W, but they also increased the AP scaling. To put this in perspective, 10% AP scaling, but they reduced the base damage by 25. So you're going to be needing 250 AP
Two
to,
items or even three.
yeah, I think for Ari, right, we're probably rocking up at 2.5,
Yes.
3 items to make up for it. Big
Yep.
change.
Hmm.
On the flip side, they did also increase the charm AP ratio, but it's an ability that you just use less than W. W is just short cooldown, constantly using, and with the cooldown increase and
Yeah.
everything else, is a massive nerf, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Massive nerf. So we had her tiered in S tier initially. We had her tiered
Yeah.
all the way right here. I don't think she is S tier anymore after these changes. What do you think?
I think I would put her in A tier, in my opinion. I think she'll still be really good just because Ari's kit is very good for solo queue. High mobility, still has her high wave clear, still has her good skirmishing, right? She still has a lot of these tools. It just what got hit was her early skirmishing got reduced a peg, and her Roa build is a lot weaker now, right? Because the Roa gives very little AP until it's stacked up, so you're gonna feel the damage nerfs a lot harder, and the durability nerfs a lot harder. But I still think her kit fundamentally is just too powerful for solo queue, in my opinion, for her to be. I think it would be a criminal for her to be any lower than A,
Yeah,
personally.
I fully agree. I think she has very similar traits as to the likes of a Galio.
Yeah.
And she's really good at getting prio, shove and moving, being present at place, brute forcing plays even. And due to the more utility that she provides comparatively to, for example, the Aurora, I think that she's a slight step above and definitely still insanely reliable. If you're an Ahri main, I know it's your champ's getting hit, but don't feel too bad about it. Your champ's still going to be completely okay.
Yep.
Anything you want to add to Ahri?
I mean, one last thing I will say is that maybe you guys might want to consider a more AP focused build, right? A more bursty style build. Like I personally really like going absolute focus on Ari, um, especially now after these changes, right? Having more AP in your runes and in your items will make you will actually get more damage later into the game than before, right? So if you're somebody who loves like full AP, stack as much AP as you can, no haste, Ari, just get in there, one shot somebody, get out. You're actually getting buffed in the mid to late game, right? So keep that in mind, guys.
Perfect. So Syndra, right? Syndra was S tier. Let's see what
Yep.
they actually changed about Syndra in her kit. I'll walk through these changes. So first of all, her W slow gets reduced over with levels put into it. So this was starting at level 1, 25, all the way up to 45, which is absolutely really good. And now this is 25 flat. So the W ability just in general is worse with levels. Pretty big change in my opinion. This is absolutely massive. Her E, like big flat base damage nerf right here, down by 35, but up by 15% scaling. So you need also, once we're getting to that magic number of about 200 AP that Riot's working with all the time, where you're going to get a little bit of a buff. Now on Syndra, it's a little bit better to have this comparatively towards Ahri, because Syndra actually stacks a large amount of AP, also because of her passive. And when it comes to her R, we see a very similar change right here in the sense that they are now nerfing the base damage with 10, but they're increasing the AP ratio with 3%. So give or take 330 AP is going to be setting this off. So her scaling actually becomes a little bit stronger when it comes to her damage numbers. 3+ items, keep that in mind. And her W utility is down. Okay, so since I'm the Syndra guy, right, I'll give my input first. You're biased, you hate that champ, I know.
I do, yes, I do.
You're smiling ear to ear from these nerfs, I see. All right. So the intention of this nerf was to make her more of a burst mage and less with that BFT Cosmic Drive build. Now, I can guarantee you, them hitting the slow is only going to incentivize her more to go BFT Cosmic Drive. Because we need it right now. Otherwise, we are just going to be more of a victim when it comes to people trying to stick towards us. So BFT Cosmic, guys, is completely still in the picture. 100%. This is going to mean that we're just going to be flat out nerfed as Syndra until we hit the 3-item spike on Rabadons. And once we get the Rabadons, that's when we're going to be definitely buffed and we're going to see pretty big damage number. I mean, not super big, but definitely pretty just decent damage number increases in our abilities, because we rack up to about like at least 500-600 AP usually quite fast, because once we complete Rabadons, we also have our passive AP increase, so the numbers start stacking up upon each other quite heavily. So this is a nice late game buff. I think it's decent. I don't necessarily think she needed it. I'd much rather have them just flat out nerf the damage a bit and keep this slow at the percentages was. This is definitely a tough nerf, but I think for Syndra players, personally, I would say she is potentially still S tier, maybe top of A tier. What do you think, AJ?
Yeah, so in my opinion, right, the reason why I thought she was S tier last patch, because she did everything, right? She was a burst mage, but she had, with that haste build, she had low cooldowns, so she could burst through low cooldowns. She had good peel with that build. She had a strong lane, right? She had good scaling, right? She just did everything that you would want from a control mage. And so the reason why I like these changes, like as someone who doesn't play Syndra, is that this first of all reduces her ability to kite, right? So that helps. That gives her some sort of weakness, right? And actually, her laning phase strength is what goes down, right? If you think of it like this, right, her E base damage gets nerfed, right? So what happens is, let's say you get hit by 5 Syndra combos before your first reset, That's 75 HP that you just got back, right? And when you're playing against a champ, a burst slash poke oriented laner, that adds up a lot for her lane phase. And so that was, in my opinion, one of the most frustrating things is like you don't even feel comfortable going even against a Syndra because she's going to outscale you. So now we actually have an ability to kind of out sustain her, out whittle her down, right? So I think she's still going to do all the Syndra things, which is at two and a half items, right? I just think she has a little bit more weakness in lane, in my opinion, now with the R nerf and the E nerf. That
Yeah.
I think she will be top of A, in my opinion, or middle of A, somewhere around there, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think one of the things to note is actually, I think they, one thing to note is that actually level 1 it's only 15 damage.
Yep.
And this is the ability we max lost.
Yep.
So what it looks like to me is actually that it's not that big of a change. If it would be 35 flat, it'd be massive. But since this ability went
Right.
to max last, 15, we have that offset quite quickly at 100 AP. So it's a small lane nerf, but at
Yeah.
BFT, damage numbers are going to be rocking
Yeah.
up
For sure.
same numbers. So it's actually not that bad at all.
Yeah, once you get BFT, it's basically the same. It's just for that first initial, like even before
Yeah.
last chapter, right? Where you're actually using your E on cooldown to poke. I think people who lane against Syndra will feel it, which I like. I can appreciate that change.
Pretty sure she's S tier still. This champ's still
Okay,
mega good.
look, you're the Syndra person. I hate Syndra, so if
Yeah.
we want to leave her at S, that's good for me. I get the
Yeah.
comp, so let's put her in S then.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she's still S after this. Like she's still good as fuck. She's still gonna do
Fair
Syndra
enough.
things.
Right.
Okay, we're gonna move on to your bold prediction from last video. You said Triss was gonna be
Yes.
OP, and
And what happened?
guess what happened, boys? Right?
Go back to the video, guys. I called it. They yeah, they were very fast, actually, right, on nerfing on Trist. They don't want to get another Trist meta, right? Um, so yeah, I'll talk about this change. I mean, it's
Yeah,
relatively straightforward, right? Just 50 damage off the board on her R. Now that doesn't sound like that bad of a nerf, but again, on champions like Tristana and like Syndra, like I was talking about, a little bit of numbers off can actually
yeah,
make a big difference because she's a champ that she's an inherently snowbally champ. So I just want you to imagine over the course of 100 games you play, 5 of those games you missed the kill on your level 6 all in, and that lost you the game. That's all of a sudden a 10 game LP swing worth, right? So think of it like that. That could completely change Tristana as a champion, in my opinion. So even though this change doesn't look that bad, and yes, mid to late game, she's still gonna be insanely strong. The Unitol changes still benefit a lot. I think she'll still be picked. I just think this reduces her down a little bit, right? I think instead of being something that's like really prominent all the time, you're
yeah,
gonna feel maybe a little bit of that weakness at level 6, which I do like. I think this is a good change
yeah,
where she still be playable, just not so like, oh wow, I guess at level 6 she's gonna 100 to 0 me. Like maybe she does only 70% or eighty
yeah.
percent of your HP, and that will make a big difference.
Yeah, I absolutely agree because the main issue I found lane against Trist is the fact that her kill ranges are so high.
Yes.
But she can kill you from 60% if she lands her full bomb plus
Yes.
R. Because the base damage of this is wild, by the way.
Yes.
And the problem with that combo is if you combine the burst-oriented nature of Tristana and you play versus a mage, for example, she jumps onto your face once, you're instantly in kill range for the next jump. And even if you trade
Yes.
equally on the particular jump, what's going to happen is that you are forced back because of her high kill threat. And this kill threat now slightly going down means that especially in mid game or in mid lane, you actually have a little bit more breathing room to play with that small wins mindset and slowly chip away the health bar, which increase range, what she struggles with.
100%.
So, what do you think she is? You think she's going to be more conditional, still reliable, still A tier?
I mean, I don't feel comfortable. I think she's at the very bottom of A. I think she would be at the bottom of A. Still think she's gonna be reliable. She
Yeah,
just now has more minor weak. Again, this is a minor weakness, it's very specific. That level 6 spike, right? A
yeah,
very specific weakness that she got added. It will make a difference, but I don't think it's enough to push her down to like B, right? In my opinion.
yeah.
What do you
I
think?
I actually agree. I think there's arguments from both sides.
Yeah.
From what I've seen before, like I still think this is it's a good champ right now. Of course, these
Yeah.
number changes may sometimes point out a little bit more drastically than we initially
Yeah,
anticipate. He's also
that's true.
spotted it last year with the AD carry changes.
Right.
But yeah, like controversial. I think for now I'm happy putting her in A. We'll reassess
Mhm.
next patch and see
A
what.
bottom of A, right? So I
Yeah,
think I think if somebody were to say, "Hey, look, I think Triss is B now," I'm I'm fine with that as well. Or if we're wrong and she is B, then it makes sense, right?
yeah,
I think that's where I'm at.
absolutely. Okay, so we're gonna move on to Wei, and I think Wei
Yeah.
got some much deserved love this
Yes.
patch. Like we've been saying this for a while now. People yelling, "Why is Wei C tier? I love Wei. What happened to
Yeah.
Wei? Wei's not that bad." People are fucking. They're excited about this champ.
Yes.
They're
People
dedicated to
just
this
like this.
champ.
A lot of people just it is what it is. If you like it something, you want it to be good, right?
Yeah,
That's just the nature of something. Like if you have something you're passionate about or something that's really fun or something that resonates with you, you're gonna try to make your case based off of what how you feel, right?
yeah,
And so, guys, I understand. I was not a control mage player before I started playing Hwei. Like Hwei was my introduction to being a high elo control mage player. I love this champ as much as anybody else. Like I love this champ. I just had to drop him because how little damage he did, and that's the reason why we had him so low before is because the damage changes or the damage how little damage he did compared to
yeah,
other control mages. And now if we look at this, guys, look at how massive these buffs are. These are ridiculous base damage buffs on Hwei. Like his passive went from like a 180 at level 18, which yes, you rarely get to 230. That is so much
yeah,
extra damage.
yeah. That's
Um,
crazy. I actually think that they buffed him in exactly the right spot, and these are also the nerfs that they did to him before. So
yes,
if we go towards the nerfs that they did, I think,
there was a
in,
passive nerf somewhere.
yeah. So right, so they nerfed the AP ratio from passive
Yes,
by 5%, and they
yes.
also reduced other AP
All
ratios in his
AP
kit.
like AP ratios on a lot of his spells. Yeah.
Exactly. So with these changes to the base damage buff of the passive, I actually think this is gonna mitigate and
Yes.
um, potentially even make it slightly stronger. I'm not sure about
So
the
yeah, so
specifics.
I think the build is going to change a little bit. We're going to really want to go, actually, very similar to Syndra. We're going to want to go a haste spammy build, right? Any champ that has
Mm,
reduction in AP up base damage means you want durability items, haste items, movement speed items, items that help you get your rotations as much as possible. Base damage increases. So, guys, items that increase the damage or base damage goes up like crazy, right? So,
yeah.
what are those items? Horizon focus,
Yep.
Leandries,
Yep.
right? I mean, honestly, I could literally see a Roa Riftmaker Leandry Hwei build because, again, base damage upgrades.
You're
Who
cooking.
knows? We'll see. Yeah, potentially. We'll see.
Yeah. So I think the haste stocks on Way were already like going through the roof on this
Yes.
champ
Yes.
before this change. But I think
Yes.
this is like the perfect way to buff to buff this
I
champ.
agree.
And for more context and more information, guys, check out the Way Unranked to Master on my YouTube. I really recommend checking that one out. Um, but yeah, like buffs on this champ, I think they nailed him. Absolutely nailed it.
I agree.
We had
Okay.
him in the C tier, right?
Yes, we
Where
did.
he was just clearly worse than all other mages.
Yes.
I'm gonna make a little bit of a bold statement here, but
Oh boy.
yeah, I think he's gonna be A tier.
Yeah, I
I
can
think he's
see it.
good.
Because when I compare, I was like, okay, after these buffs, would I rather have a Victor or Hwei?
Yeah,
And now I can actually see a compelling argument for either or, right? Victor will still have more damage output, but Hwei has unrivaled utility compared to other mages, in my opinion, right? Shield, movement speed for allies, slow in the ult, zone, a really good zone control at the
yeah,
E, fear, slow, a pull, right? At this joint, like the utility he's got is unrivaled for a control mage s style champion.
yeah.
So yeah, I can see the argument for A. I'll have to play with it before I can be really definitive. I'm still leaning on a little bit conditional
Okay,
still for me, but I don't mind him in A as well. I think he's okay in A.
okay. Yeah, I think the king of zone control is back, guys. Way yeah, I played a lot of him a few weeks ago,
Yeah,
and I think this base damage buff is exactly what was too weak on him. And them solving this, I think, is gonna make this champ like honestly do his job again and be very reliable in the way that
yeah,
he plays out.
yeah.
Very cool. Your favorite champion here, AJ, Yone.
Uh, I don't know what they're doing with Yone because so let's talk about the changes
Yeah.
first before this nerf even happened that we're coming up on. The
Yep.
changes with the E, right? So again, guys, I don't understand what the E change was. Like if I usually am pretty positive when it comes to changes and Riot and the direction Riot's going in. I had no idea why they did this E change because it reduced the skill expression, made it even more frustrating in low elo, and in high elo he becomes more stat checky, right? Like I just and we saw that's exactly what happened. I got the nail on the head. What happened was the bad games for Yone became even worse. The games that are good for him, he gets shield bow IE, and all of a sudden he can miss everything and kill you, which feels
Hmm.
horrible, right? Like even when I play against the champ now with the shield bow IE changes, he can miss everything and kill you, which is just very frustrating, right? Very frustrating. So going back to that change, I didn't like this change. And I think what they're doing now is they're now Wright's kind of lost on what to do with him. They're like, okay, well, like I don't he's too strong. The buffs were too big. And so what they've done is they nerfed his early game again, which is already, in my opinion, one of his weakest points, right? His
Yeah.
early game is not too good. So what's happening and what I really don't like about this is further and further and further widening the gap between Yone being played in very high elo and lower elo, right? Because what this change is saying is, hey, um, we're going to make his early game more punishable. Now,
Yeah.
guess which elo range being nerfed early game punishes you the most? Extremely high elo, right?
Yeah.
And guess where this change doesn't really affect that much? Lower elo. Guess
Yeah.
where all the frustration for Yone is? Lower elo,
Yeah.
right? So in terms of tier listing him for higher elo, again, I think he's got to be reduced a little bit, right? I do think he is really strong, in some games, but I just think he's conditional. I really do think he's a conditional champ. And again, this tier list is for high elo guys. I think if we were to make a tier list for lower elo, I think
Yeah.
he's much higher. But for
Absolutely.
high elo, he's conditional. You've got to have the good game for Yone, and then he's very good.
Yep.
And this
I agree.
changes further pushes that even more, in my opinion.
So a lot of people are going to be wondering, right? Because a lot of
Yes,
people wonder, why does this crit damage change so much on Yone? Because they did the exact same change
yes,
to Yasuo, but it's
yes,
less impactful on Yasuo. Well, Yone doesn't only get 10% increased damage output with his crits, his E amplifies that as well. So we're going to be stacking up damage upon damage upon damage upon
nice.
damage. And when that passive then gets proc from the E, all the damage gets repeated again because you deal already extra damage. So just damage overload in a way.
Yes, I mean, I would say Yasuo does significantly less damage than Yone when their crit rate numbers are the same.
Yeah.
And actually, there was a point in time where Yasuo got those crit changes like removed as well, where he had full crit scaling, and Yone still had it, and he also actually scaled better than Yone because of that, right? So these crit changes are massive for that. And then now, yeah, Yone having it off as well, his scaling is through the roof, right? I think it's about 13% more damage. Like even though the number is only 10% less, it's 13% more when you factor in the IE crit damage. So it's like 13% more. And as Tim said, with the E change, it's just, yeah, you become so stat checky. So it's
Yeah. A lot of people
very
don't
good.
understand what 13% is. If we take 13% of a
Yes.
already existing crit of 700 with IE shield bow and
Yes.
uh, we're talking just
Yeah,
minimal
like a
50 to up to
freight train.
100 extra damage.
Yeah. With just what per hit. And then you multiply that with your E,
Yeah.
which is 30, which is 25%, right? 25 to 30%. And it's just ridiculous,
Yeah.
right? So we'll
Crazy
see about
damage.
Yone. I have a feeling we're going to be seeing this guy change almost every patch. I, I don't really know what they're doing, honestly. If it were me, I would do the reverse,
Yeah.
reduce his damage and improve his outplay potential. But look, I'm not the designers. It is what it is. I think he's still a great champ in some games, horrible in other games. I think that's where he's at right now.
Yep. Okay. Next one. We are gonna be talking about Zoe. I think this one is
Mm,
this is a
that's
statement
a
from
doozy.
Riot Games here.
Yeah,
This is a fucking statement that what they're doing because
they want this champ to be meta. That's for sure.
holy moly, this is insane, no? The
This is one of
damage.
the most ridiculous buffs I've ever seen.
I think
Like,
I'm gonna ban this champ.
I guys, I'm telling you, like there's been some ridiculous buffs to champions throughout the day. The thing is that's scary, but this looks very tame. This is one of the most insanely OP buffs I've ever seen to a
Yeah,
champion in the last few years. Like no exaggeration.
yeah,
Because I'll explain why. Zoe is a champ. She likes early game skirmishes like Ahri, right? She likes to push and move. She likes to kill creeps and then get her E combo, right? So this change goes from every single caster minion surviving with 1 HP or every melee minion surviving with 1 HP to dead. That change improves your speed of how fast you push and move. Go
yeah,
from maybe it takes you're shaving off 5 seconds at least, in my opinion. Five,
yeah,
5 seconds. You're probably shaving off a full Q cooldown. And that's just talking about the wave clear. That's not even talking about all the creative stuff you can do where you can now get a good E angle with the
yeah.
wave clear of your Q. Things like that. Just the most ridiculous change I've ever seen, in my opinion.
Yeah, this champ is insane. And what I want to note is
Yes.
a lot of people don't understand that the counter to Zoe is the fact, like her
It's wave
weakness
clear.
was the wave clear.
Yes.
And
Yes.
if we're gonna be looking at Zoe wiki, right? And I want to just
Yes.
show you guys the amount of raw damage they pumped to this champ the past few
Yeah. The AP
buffs, right?
ratios.
The
Yeah.
the changes that they did to her E, magic resist
Oh yeah, the
reduction.
E, right. Yeah.
One E means that you just one shot someone.
Yeah.
It kills. A single E with this kills, and that's absolutely mental on this champion.
Yes. Agreed.
Crazy, crazy, crazy buff. So I think this champ is borderline overpowered at the moment.
I'm gonna make like I called it with the Trist. I actually think she might be a broken by concept champ after this patch.
Okay.
I like I her okay. So her major weakness outside of lane, like I think she has literally no weaknesses in lane anymore. Like
No,
literally
she's
none.
so good.
I will say she does have a weakness in the side lane, but to offset that, some of the really high elo Zoe players have built really defensive items. Like I see Samikin, who's like one of the best Zoes in the world. He's consistently high challenger in NA. He goes like Seraph's Horizon, and I think the reason why he does that is, I mean, the E has such a short cooldown that you can actually kind of survive the side lane a little bit. So, in my opinion, and actually, I was recommended to play Zoe. I might play some Zoe, and I do think she might be an S tier champ in my opinion. I'm going
Yeah,
out on a little bit of a reach and a little bit of a limb. I'm calling it now. I think she might be an S tier champ
yeah,
with this
I agree.
change.
I think she's SC too. And we have to understand that the reason why her side laning was bad, right? Of course, she's a little bit vulnerable in the side lane, but
Yes.
she's got the bubbles, she's got the move speed, she's got some self peel. The
Yeah.
reason her side laning was bad was because of her wave clear,
Awkward wave clear. Yes.
awkward wave clear, hard to grab up the minions. Them fixing
Yes.
that, I say she is
Yeah.
insane.
I think so as well.
She is crazy. This champ has so much damage, so much pressure in the lane. You're constantly under
Yes.
threat. Okay,
That's right.
wild change, wild change. Okay, to offset that, we're now going to move on to Annie, right? Because we have one of the now what's most standout champs in the game, and we're going to go
Yes.
towards our favorite dogshit tier inhabitant, Annie. And they did make some changes to her, which I think that are actually quite healthy changes to the champion.
Yes.
So let's break them down. We're going to start off with health growth. Health growth slightly down. Annie had quite a bit of HP as base stats. Why? She's a middle range mage, so she is not super squishy. She shouldn't be super squishy because then, as a middle range mage, you die so much. So she did have some health, which gets removed. But to offset that, what they do is they increase the base damage on her Q and the scaling on her Q.
Hmm.
Pretty insane scaling if you look at it. They
Yep.
also increased the base damage on the W, especially if you rank it up later down the line. And they also lowered the cooldown of it. So this is going to offset one of Annie's weaknesses when it comes to wave clear a little bit later down the line. What you might see right now is that the Annie players will potentially, once again, put 3 points W. I don't know how this affects wave clear breakpoints to be exact.
Yeah.
Maybe it actually changes something, and that changes Annie's overall effectiveness in the game.
Hmm.
But her getting extra base stats right here is just good for her because her basic ability kit wasn't that useful in lane, and that's what she was really struggling in, especially in higher elo. And what they did is that usually the higher elo enemies, they used Tibbers as a bit of a compensation tool
Yes.
to try to get wave control.
Yeah.
What Tibbers now gets is Tibbers becomes weaker, just all over the board.
Hmm.
Less aura damage, less auto attack damage. But they do give her now flat magic penetration. This means that Annie becomes less an ult caster oriented champ and more of an inbuilt burst damage oriented champion with a little bit more power in her basic abilities and just more burst, while a little bit less damage over time in team fights, which definitely solidifies her identity. And what I want to note about Annie is that Annie is a champion that either has the stats to kill you or does not have the stats to kill you, because she has no other tools to work with. Her wave clear is not it, right? So if she is now strong enough to kill you in lane and stat check you, she's going to be very powerful. The real question that we're going to ask ourselves, are these changes enough to offset the fact from any stat checking you to not stat checking you? What do you think?
That's hard to say, honestly,
Yeah.
without playing against it and feeling it out. Um, I do think there will definitely be moments in the game where you're gonna kill someone where you wouldn't have because of the magic pen change. That is an insanely good buff for Annie. And I do think these changes do make her better as a champion. It doesn't solve her weaknesses, like Tim was saying. She still has bad wave clear, short range, yada yada yada. But they did give her a little bit more of an X factor. So when we're talking about champions that burst, right? They need to kill you, right? They're like assassins. They have to kill you. And so whenever a champion gets percentage scaling in their kit, that always makes their mid to late game significantly better, right? So what I mean by percentage scaling, right? Look at Ambessa, one of the strongest late game scaling champs in the game. Percentage penetration on her R, right? Syndra, percentage AP, right? Scaling. Azir, right? W gets scaled by 3 different ways, right? AP, level, and ability, right? All of these champions that have very, very good late game scaling have multiple percentage increase scaling that multiply with each other, right? So having this R change will actually give Annie, in my opinion, a little bit more oomph in the late game, which means you're not so pressured to always have to get shit done early game. Yes, that's still her identity. Yes, she's a burst mage. Yes, she's still will fall off relative to an Azir, but she has way more applications later onto the game, and she will be able to get through people later into the game way better. Do not underestimate even 15% magic pen, even 12.5% magic pen. That's a ridiculous amount more damage
Yeah.
for later in the game.
Absolutely, because Annie's main counter was either wave clear or
Yes.
tanky stats.
Yes. Exactly.
So I think the changes are in a way quite healthy. I think that they approach Annie in a way that she has now a little bit of a better niche. I still think that the champ does not have what it takes
Yes.
to consistently compete with the other champs, strong champs in higher elo. The
Yep.
only time that this is going to be present and where this will be is if her damage numbers are too high. So that's the main
Yes.
thing that we're going to be
Right. It could
basically
be
seeing.
too high, but hard to tell from just looking at this.
Yeah. So my hunch is I think she's worthy of to go out of dog shit tier.
Yeah,
And
I think so.
I think she's either conditional or counterpick. I think she has some more tools right now. In a melee matchup, right, we're going to be offsetting that wave clear weakness from us. So counterpick is definitely
Yes, I think she's C. I
here.
think she's C. Yeah, I think because again, BT going back to BT real quick, it's a champ that you can play even if it's not good for your lane. That's good for the game. I don't really think you can get out of a bad lane as any, even if it's a good game for it. Like let's say you get 4 short range champions that are squishy at every role besides mid, but then you lane against a high range control mage mid. I think you're still gonna massively struggle as Annie. So I think she's in C.
Okay.
Unless her wave clear is good enough with the W, which is hard to say at this moment. I could be wrong. She could actually be even B tier or higher. But given the numbers I see right now, I think she's C because
Beautiful.
I have yet to see the wave clear.
Okay. Small changes to Xerath, right? We had Xerath in the counterpick tier initially right there.
Yes.
Let's take a look at the changes that they actually made. Let's scroll down for that one. And we see that they made some small changes when it comes to some mana increases, which only really affect pre-loss chapter. And
Yeah.
even then, it's very minimal in my opinion. A bit of a placebo one.
Yes.
But one thing that Xerath does like is some extra base damage on the Q, because reality's base damage on this ability is just really fucking low compared to anything else. 75 base damage, that's not high for your main ability that
Still
you want
not
to.
great.
No.
Yeah.
So I think it's good changes, right? I think that last patch definitely was a small, just overall nerf because they lowered his early game strength. So I think grabbing it slightly up with this, I think it's fair. Don't think it changed much.
I
C
think he's
tier,
yeah, still C.
very similar still to the Lux and the Ziggs.
Yep.
Mel, let's go to Mel right here. What we spot with Mel is more base health, powerful.
Yep.
When they do a change like this, right, 30 base health, it's usually about a 1% win rate increase that they want. This is going to, of course, translate throughout the entirety of the game. In the early game, harder to kill. Every single reset, you're going to get this HP back. In the mid game, there's going to be situations where this will be the difference between you dying or not. And overall, it's about 1% win rate increase on 30 base health. Right, does that a lot in other changes as well. And you see a little bit more inbuilt damage when it comes to the passive right here.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about this?
Okay, so the reason why I think we had her in D tier last time, and the
Yeah.
reason why I really strongly advocated for being in D tier is that she is a champ that has artillery mage properties, and she has a lot of damage and a lot of good scaling, but her laning phase is weak, which makes absolutely no sense for a champ of her archetype, right? To have a weak lane because she can't side lane, right? She can only team fight, and she only has good scaling. So how are you going to make it to that point, right? And so that's why I think she was so bad. So these changes only really primarily buffing her early game will actually help a lot in my opinion. Like it looks very humble. I think it will change a lot because the passive, right, you apply that passive a lot in lane, right? Because I think it applies based off of her spells and her auto attacks as both, if I remember correctly. So you're getting actually a lot of damage racked up over time, and then that base durability will help you trade a little bit more in the early game. So I think she's still not going to be the best. I still think this doesn't solve all of her problems, but I don't think she's D tier anymore
No,
off of those changes.
for sure. I think she's gonna be pretty decent seed here now because
Yeah.
I think that if you can find her the right matchup, right, where lane wasn't necessarily the issue, and you can actually skill up. Maybe a very good comparison is the Ahri, where your W just has insane value.
Yes.
I say she's probably in a
Yes.
position where
I think so as well.
you can make it work.
Yep, I think you can actually make her work now with these changes, and I can also see argument for her. Maybe we're underestimating. She could be higher, but I want to be on the conservative side because she has been really bad. So I think moving her up one tier from D to C makes sense in my opinion. But I could see her being higher, maybe as well.
Yeah, I love that. So we finished our tier. Just to recap a few things right here. I think we got a still a very clear S tier with definitely bottom S tier Zinra, average S tier Talia, and our prediction is that Zoe's going to be meta defining. Might even need the nerf. Might need a hot fix actually.
Yeah,
Might need a hot
this
fix.
is ridiculous change I've ever seen.
Yeah. So our prediction is hot fix on Zoe and standard S tier on Talia and lower S tier for Zinra. Definitely a bit worse. When it comes to A tier, I think everything is pretty solid. Anything you want to change about A tier
Yep.
here?
Nope, I think AT looks great.
Okay. B tier, I think as well. We didn't make too many changes when it comes to B tier.
Yep.
C tier has good champs in it right now, and
Yeah.
D tier I also agree with. So
Yep.
overall, thoughts, conclusions, anything you wanna add or think is worth discussing?
No, I mean I'm happy with this. Well, what I will say, guys, is we're getting a big, I guess, over holistic league shakeup, right? With the changes coming in for the like Ionia's Spear Blossom or whatever. So
Yeah,
I have a feeling that the champs are going to shift around a lot because of that. Because again, right now, this just holistically, if we're zooming out real quick, this this tier list is formed based off of kind of the game, the meta of the game
yeah,
holistically, right? A lot of Grubs fights, a lot of Drake fights, neutral objective fighting nonstop, very limited laning at their certain point, really pushing move style, a lot of skirmishing, mid game presence and side lane, right? So a
yeah.
lot of our tier list is revolved around that. Now, again, the Ionia changes could change that, and so we'll have to see and rediscuss when we get to that point. But for now, I'm very happy with this based off of the meta of the game.
I absolutely agree. Because the Ionia changes, they will like reduce one grip spawn,
Yes,
and that's going to already like shake up the amount of skirmishes and
yes,
how much isolated
a lot.
laning that we're getting.
Yes.
It's gonna up some stocks of other champs, lower some stocks of others. But for now,
Yes.
very clear defined meta. These are your S tier picks, guys. Make sure that you abuse while you still can, because there's some temp LP in temp elo in the air at the moment. So if you guys have any questions or anything you want to discuss, right, feel free to hit us up in the comments. We'll take a look at the comments and happy to discuss some stuff or answer some questions. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks with some more updates. Peace out, guys.